So when people talk about Common Core, that's not a method of teaching. It's a set of standards.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's a set of standards. It's a set of benchmarks that teachers are expected to meet and reach. So it certainly is not dictating the curriculum. Teachers are able to choose. Districts are able to select and choose their own curricula. I think the question becomes the connection between standardization and standards, and assessments and standards. I think that's what we generally leave out of the equation. I think that's what forces teachers' hands sometimes. That's why they feel boxed in and constrained, because they had a set of these standardized assessments that they have to meet, which speak to the standards as they should, but what's stuck in the middle is curriculum, and so how the teachers innovate, how the teachers work to meet those standards pinned against those assessments, that is the big struggle for teachers.
So do they need to change the way they're teaching outside of this Common Core conversation? You said innovation. Is there an evolution of the way we educate that needs to be taking place here?
Yeah, I think that there already is sort of an evolution of the way that educators are teaching. So in my role, I have the great opportunity to see a lot of the really innovative things that teachers and administrators are doing in their classrooms, schools, and districts. And so those range from some of the things we've already heard tonight, like a community school model, to using and leveraging student data, all the way to things like creating student incubators where students can start up their own companies, and creating maker spaces in schools where people can learn hands-on and get really practical skills and apply them in a very creative way. So there's a range of things that people are doing to kind of go back to what Alex was saying, to meet those standards and benchmarks, but in a way that meets the learner where they are.
And the learners are learning differently. I have to believe, I think it was Margie from DESE was talking about the iPhone. I mean, everybody knows a child that can't talk yet, but they can run an iPad almost, it seems like.
Right.
My daughter.
Yeah, but that's my daughter as well. Absolutely. I mean, I think students, their relationship with knowledge, their relationship with how they access knowledge, understand knowledge, is going to be fundamentally different, is continuing to be fundamentally different. And so as we progress to prepare teachers, to provide professional development for teachers, we have to continually adapt and almost catch up, because technology itself is moving so quickly that we are almost playing a catch-up game with our teachers sometimes.
Is there an emphasis on the math and the language arts that we're hearing about with some of these standards, and does it need to be those particular subjects, or we've also heard critical thinking is something we should be teaching?
Yeah, so I think Common Core standards are specifically targeted towards English language arts and mathematics, but as Margie mentioned, within Missouri Learning Standards, there are standards for social sciences and science as well. So maybe for that conversation, it's focused on ELA and math, but I think, in terms of having standards and benchmarks, they're there across all subjects. In terms of sort of the focus on thinking, I think that the Common Core standards have created that shift nicely to focusing on thinking and developing critical thinking skills. And again, back to Alex's point, gone are the days when people need to memorize the facts, and so they can look those up immediately. And so it's more about, how do you navigate all of that information? How do you teach students and equip students to find the appropriate information and to think on their feet when they're faced with new information?
Well, I'll also add that across this notion of what we're assessing, I think what the danger is in this entire movement towards standardization, that I feel like we're getting students that, although the standards are speaking to these critical thinking aspects, that we are also using very convergent thinking with, bubbling in the right answer and getting these kind of this data system that we're creating. So certainly we need the data to help us understand what's occurring in classrooms. But I'm not as optimistic, I guess, that the kind of critical thinking that we need to help us solve big complex problems are answered by selecting one of 4 answers on a test and then using that data to tell us something meaningful about the classroom. There has to be more. The package that you ran earlier regarding human rights, they turned that into, well, human rights, trying to figure that out and then trying to connect it to achievement data. There should be a place in our education system for a deep understanding of human rights, and we should be able to capture that in a way that is meaningful. We can't solve complex problems like what's occurring in Ferguson with just select the right answer. There is not one single right answer. We need deep, complex thinking from our future citizens. And we need an education system and a set of standards that speaks to that, and a set of assessments that also help us get there.
So do we need to be able to measure whether we're succeeding in that goal?
Do we?
I mean, if the things you're talking about are kind of, they're not very tangible.
They're not, but there are ways to capture them. There are ways to value when students walk out of a school in protest for Michael Brown. That should be capturable. We should be able to take some of that data, count that as data, count that as measurable, count that as evidence of learning, of citizenship, of our students operating and working in a democracy to solve a big problem, to have their voice in a democracy. That should be part of this entire scheme. We've heard a lot about business. We've heard a lot about jobs, and a purpose of education is absolutely jobs, but it's also about democracy. It's also about deep critical thinking, in the way that I think is positioned in the standards, but that isn't really currently assessed in education.
What are the, you're teaching the teachers, what are they saying? What are their concerns? What's the feedback you get from them?
So we have overhauled and changed a lot of how we're preparing in-service teachers as well as, pre-service teachers, as well as how we provide professional learning opportunities for in-service teachers. And so to that point, we're trying to work on providing new opportunities. One of our faculty members has developed the Cultural Competency Institute to get to exactly that. So it's kind of trying to provide and help teachers develop an understanding of the context in which students learn, as well as helping think about what they're learning and kind of the goals of those benchmarks and standards as well.
Does this require a more personal way of teaching, or a more personal involvement by the community? Something that you can't just bubble in, as you said?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a community is a key partner in teacher preparation and teacher education, something that I think Brittany's doing really well. And something that I think, at least I can speak for me, I think we can learn from as education institutions in terms of how to bring the community into our classrooms and bring our classrooms into the community. I think they're vital partners and partners that we can hope to continue to reach out to.